how we're engaging with customers, how we're trying to find the right customers. And I'm going to take a little different approach today. I'm going to take it from the customer's point of view a little bit more. Those that don't know me, I've been in the space for a long time. All the way back in 2000, I started one of the early pay-per-click search companies. Over a 3.5-year period of time, we acquired 40,000 small business customers. So kind of early on in the adoption from small businesses moving from traditional advertising into the search world. And then I started a company called Orange Soda, which was an SEO SEM company. And so over these years, we've worked with hundreds of thousands of small businesses. And as time has evolved, so has kind of the ecosystem. But the small business, the local business, the plumber, the dentist, the doctor, they're still performing the same type of functions. But the way that they're connecting and the way that they're finding customers has changed dramatically. And so I think as an industry, we've kind of set a lot of SMBs up and local SMBs up for failure in a way. What we're trying to deliver to them is what we think that they need. And we think that we're giving them customers. And that's what that small business really needs, is they need customers. And whether it's existing customers, whether it's new customers, to them, their business kind of really revolves around the need of customers. But I think the real disconnect comes in is because we're not necessarily delivering them a customer, we're really delivering them a potential customer. We're delivering them a lead. And that may come in a form of a search result, that may come in a form of a marketplace, a directory, but it's actually a pretty big disconnect. And I'm going to actually walk through here in a second an actual small business customer and kind of how this actually affects them. And so we've talked a little bit about the funnel today, and so really as an industry, we're here kind of at the top, right? We're trying to deliver as many qualified potential customers, I'll call them leads, we call it the customer. But really once we deliver that, once we hand that off, and it could be in the form of a web lead, it could be a phone call, it could be a message, something, it's up to the business owner at that point to really kind of create the awareness and kind of bringing that potential consumer down the funnel until they get to a purchase point. And us as business owners, we think about things differently because we have systems in place. We're using Salesforce, or we're using marketing automation, and we're qualifying these prospects. And we're doing a lot of work before we actually talk to them to bring them along. But think about the local dentist. He's making his money when he has someone in the chair. The plumber is making money when his staff is out actually doing a job. And so the whole idea of actually this funnel is much different from a small business perspective. But let's say that we deliver a bunch of leads at the top. We kind of go down through this funnel. Obviously, this is really high cost for these businesses. And I say it's low value, and I'll kind of show you what I mean by that in a second. But we get to that first purchase. In the business's mind, that is a customer. But in the consumer's mind, it's not always the same. And so we believe that there's an existing point at the bottom of the funnel that is really critical, that needs to happen in order to really get activation and drive loyalty out of that consumer relationship. And to get to them to the point that they're willing to actually talk about that business takes a lot more work than the guy putting on his booties when he goes in your house to fix a water heater. And so I think it's really critical. And from a small business's standpoint, this whole funnel, it all kind of leads together. I mean, they're looking for customers, and so whether it's loyalty, it's acquisition, if it's retention, customer satisfaction, it all looks kind of the same to them, but this whole funnel, from top to bottom, and then what's below that funnel is super important to the business. So I want to talk a little bit about customer data and how customer more customer data can actually help the small business. And we, as a SaaS company or a marketing company or an agency, we're collecting data every single day. These businesses are also collecting data every single day. They have silos of data. They have their accounting, their transaction data, and they have their marketing data, their Facebook, their Google, their marketplaces. They have CRMs, their phones. They have all of this data that's coming in, but it's all sitting in these silos. And so when they think about the customer, it's not how we think about the customer. We're going to go out and aggregate information. When I'm talking to a small business, we want to go learn as much about that small business as we can. When the plumber gets a customer, he knows their name, address, and telephone number, and what he's going to go do. And that's kind of the extent of it. So I'm going to walk through a few slides and actually talk about a real customer. This is a business, they've been in business for 8 or 9 years. They have over 60,000 leads that they've acquired. So these are leads that they bought from their SEO efforts and their marketing efforts and their Google and their Thumbtack and HomeAdvisor and all these other things, right? Over 13,000 of those have converted into a job for this business. Most of them are residential, some of them are commercial. But it's really interesting. This business is actually doing better than an average, it's a plumber in their area, but they have 8,600 customers that have only used them one time. They have 4,400 customers that have repeated or are loyal. They've done over 25,000 jobs. And so you can start doing the math, and we're going to kind of walk through this in a second. But for this business, I've covered it up, but this is kind of what their database looks like. So they can have, and it doesn't matter if it's Chris Johnson, if it's Sam Smith, all the names, it's really meaningless. And so they're taking this data and they're putting it into maybe a CRM of some sort, maybe they're putting it into MailChimp, maybe they're putting it in something, but every customer really looks exactly the same. And so if we think about what do they really know about those customers, they know where they live. They probably, in one database, they have their names, addresses, and telephone numbers. And they may be using something like this customer uses ServiceTitan. So in ServiceTitan, they know what the work order history is, and they can do some basic reports. But when you think about who their real customer is, their technician that went out on the job, put his booties on, went in, did the job, shook the person's hand. They did a lot of training, so that was a really good customer experience. But as soon as that technician walks out the door and they're in their truck going to their next job, nobody in that business is ever going to think about that customer again. So when we really think about this, who is Chris Johnson, it goes beyond the name and address and telephone number. For that business, it kind of looks like this, right? I mean, everyone looks exactly the same. And so how do I, as a business owner, how do I, as this plumber, have a personalized relationship with those customers? How do I engage them in a very personal way? How do I, really, because ultimately, he wants to get that customer back. And so what they do is they go and they'll sign up for an email marketing platform, right? And so this is basically how they're looking at their customer base. I have Chris Johnson. I have name, address, and telephone number. So as we look at this, can anyone tell me who the best Chris Johnson is up there? Who do I have the most potential with? Right? So this is the way that they're thinking about it. I mean, I'm looking at the potential, and I have 3 guys up here. Which one? How do I interact with them? How do I treat them differently? How do I have that personalized interaction? We talk about it as an industry, and when we're going after customers, that we've talked about it all day, right? That personalized interaction, understanding who they are and how they act and what they do, all of those things matter. But for the average SMB that gets phone calls coming in every day, probably 30 or 40% of the time they don't even pick up the phone. So, I mean, those are lost opportunities. And then the ones that they actually talk to, they're going to, sometimes they're like, hello, right? So So that's kind of that front-end experience, and they train their guy, they go out, but then they want that customer to come back. In order for them to make money, they need that customer to come back. But really they're left with one thing. This bucket is called I hope they come back bucket, right? So if we just add a little bit more data that's sitting in their warehouse, and it's cleaning all this data and kind of combining it together, now the picture looks a little bit different. So I know that this Chris Johnson spent $175. These are real customers with real transactions with this business owner, by the way. And the next guy spent $1,750, and the last guy spent $10,000. And so we're looking at this, and we're like, oh my gosh, the guy on the right, that's my best opportunity. I need to really kind of engage with that guy. And so even taking this data, what it allows us to do is now for the first time, we're able to start segmenting these customers. So knowing the difference between a commercial customer and a residential customer and a lost customer and a brand new customer, and how we interact with those is vitally important. The kind of the follow-up with them and figuring out, because we're talking about, this is a plumber, for example, so right? How many of you need the plumber every week? So if I'm the plumber and I'm trying to interact with you every week, you're going to actually just turn the messenger off, right? And there's lots of ways to kind of interact, but the consumer still expects something there. When I go one step further and I add some additional data and additional context, the picture then looks much, much different. So my Chris Johnson on the left, this customer actually lives in Park City, Utah, lives in a $6 million house. He had the plumber come over at some point, spend $175. The opportunity in that relationship at some point could be worth a lot of money. So when he gets off of the plane from London after doing some consulting gig, and his wife says, we're redoing the kitchen next week, he says, okay. So that opportunity and knowing that person and engaging with them and continuing that relationship beyond that first purchase is super important. If we look at the guy on the right, that was the biggest opportunity. That is actually a handyman that used that plumber once in 2016 and has not come back. That plumber, if he knew that that opportunity existed, he could have built a commercial relationship and a much better relationship with the handyman. Because the idea that the handyman has not needed a plumber in the last 3 years is probably nil. And so it's understanding that and kind of starting to bucket this together. And so by taking and starting to apply not only the transaction data and combining that with the customer data, and now as we start adding some additional demographic data and personal data on top of that, we get to the point where we can not only engage those customers from a I hope they come back scenario to, oh, now they're in segments, all the way to kind of a one-on-one segment of one basis. And these are things that obviously enterprises are doing today. Has anyone heard of Amazon? Yeah. So Amazon, how often do they, how do they market to us? They market to us in a very personal way. And obviously retail and e-commerce has changed a lot. If we go back a few years, the year that Jeff Bezos sent his first book, Sears was actually a $50 billion business. I don't know if anyone's been to Sears lately, but you better go soon because they're about gone, right? So, but this is just changing. I mean, we think about how engagement, that personalized engagement, and those touch points are so vitally important today. And so, as we look at this business, the lifetime value of a loyal customer for him is 12x over that of a single customer. And so, if we look at, like, and I'll go through these stats here in a second, but that first-time customer is not doing very much revenue. If you can just bring them back one time, then they actually become a lot more profitable. And then obviously loyal. And I'm actually going to show you these stats. But for a plumber, like if he acquires 60 leads at the top of the funnel, he's going to convert about 12 of those to a paid customer. Only less than 4 of those are actually going to become a repeat customer. at any point and become a loyal customer, it's even a smaller amount. And so what is stopping that plumber from engaging these customers in a personal way? Because we don't need a plumber every day. We may not need one next week. We may not need one next month. But can we utilize that relationship? Can we utilize information? Can we utilize personalized engagement through text and social and messaging and SMS and all these other things? Can we utilize those in order to strengthen that relationship, so when that consumer, when Chris Smith gets home from his trip and he is going to redo the kitchen and he wants a plumber, that guy's top of mind? Otherwise, what we're going to do is we're going to pull out our phone, we're going to say plumber near me, and we're going to go find somebody else. And that's what consumers do every day. And so if we just knew a little bit more, if we could, and we're thinking about small businesses, and one of the things is we could actually take all this data and give it to the small business. They're never going to do anything with it. And so just like all the other automation that we're doing, being able to pull this data together and take all these what ifs and take all that data and apply it and then utilize it through a single system, that is actually what is transformative to these businesses. So taking data, this plumber, we're able to decrease their time from first to second purchase by 274%. So we went from like 180 something days down to 67 days. And it's not that all their customers are coming back, but those that are coming back, if we can actually shrink that time, and we do that through personalized engagement. So when we hit, like if you think about it, when you have a brand new customer and you have those life cycles, when you're kind of reaching back out to those customers right after a purchase, we know that first 30, 60, 90, 120 days is critical to kind of strengthen that relationship. So why is the plumber's guy walking out the door and we never hear from him again? If I went and got my wisdom teeth out yesterday, the dentist is probably going to call me tomorrow morning to make sure I'm okay. And then they may send me a text to make sure I'm okay. And then they may ask me for feedback. Why is a plumbing relationship, and we could talk about any other vertical, I'm just using this one, but I think it's really interesting. Those relationships can actually be nurtured exactly the same way that we nurture relationships with our business relationships, right? And so, and it can be automated, and the data is there. The data just needs to be kind of brought together. So this is this business 18 months ago, at the time, it was costing him $230 to acquire a customer. At the time, 80% of his customers had never come back. Average revenue was $623. His average profit was $19. At the time, I'm going to show you the stats today, but at the time, a repeat customer was worth $1,400. There's $307 in profit, and then a loyal customer was worth $4,000. His cost to retain those customers is $9. So the cost of bringing back either a repeat or a loyal customer is $9 versus $230. So today the results are even more compelling. We're able to feed a little bit of data to him. He's able to change some of his lead sources, but more importantly, and I think those customer acquisition costs can come down. So today it's costing him about $200 to acquire a customer. Today, it's costing him $6 to retain that customer, to bring them back. But this is the really interesting thing. He had $19 in profit a year and a half ago. Today, he's grown a lot. I mean, he's added a lot of customers over the past 18 months or 24 months. But his job today is worth $234. $200 to acquire a customer, $85 to roll his truck. So now he's at $285. So he has 8,600 customers that he would have been better off sending them a $50 gift card and telling them to go find another plumber. He had been $8,600 wiser, right? And so, so the only point here is some of those customers he should not be working with. Some of those customers he needs to know the customer data allows him to understand who his customers are a little better. Anyway, his second time customer, if we can bring him back one time, $1,000. And we know that if we can bring them back within 100 days, so let's say they install the water heater today, we go out and we engage them, we get them to say, hey, I just want to come in and check out the water heater. This is Dell. I installed your water heater 2 months ago. It gets them back in the house and they can do other jobs, and it helps them build on that relationship. But if you can get them within 100 days to repeat, the likelihood, there's like an 80-something% likelihood that they're going to actually become a loyal customer. That means 3 visits or more within a year. And so that's why the data and actually really kind of helping these businesses in a different way and helping them the same way that Amazon is engaging with us, taking that same type of thing and applying it to the small business. So rather than just working with your small business customers and helping them get leads at the top of the funnel, and even if you're taking those and putting them into a nice package, contact list or something else for them, that's not enough. We need to help them convert and activate and take those customers and take them to the next level. We know that 80% of a small business's future profits is going to come from a small percentage of their customer base. So why not help them find those right customers? And if it comes down to areas of town, if it comes down to income values, if it comes down to house values, number of cars they own, there's a lot of other demographical things that we can apply to make sure that they're engaging with and finding the right customers. We also know that increasing retention rate by just 5% has a dramatic increase on profitability for these small businesses. If we think about that, going back to that plumber, his single customers, he's made about $2 million in revenue. His loyal customers, which is 1/4 the size of the base, is 3x on the revenue. So he has $6.5 million in revenue off of a much smaller base. Obviously, they need to get the customer base in order to find those repeat and loyal customers. But that's why data really is super important to these guys today, because now we can actually start giving them tidbits of information, and here's lead sources that are providing those best customers for you, or here's the types of jobs that you should say no to. These are the types of jobs that you should allow some other plumber to go take, because the data is there and kind of bringing it together. But if it's sitting in silos, it doesn't do us any good. It wouldn't do us any good if we're the business owner. It's not doing them any good. And I'm not saying that the plumber, everyone's a business owner, but we can automate a lot, and at the same time, we can then start giving back some of this feedback to the customer in a way that they can consume, and with information that is easy for them to kind of use, right? I mean, I think that a lot of times it's so complicated. If we go give them all this data and stack it up in front of them and a bunch of charts and graphs, they're never going to use it. But if we can go back to them and say, your best customers, your loyal customers, have an average income of $75,000 and live in $300,000 houses, and they live in these zip codes, then it allows them to go do better targeting on their Facebook ads and their Google ads, and the leads are getting out of marketplaces and other things. And we all know, and business owners know, obviously it's a lot easier to convert past customers than it is to ever acquire a new one. And so ultimately, at the end of the day, and we've talked about this conference, for us, data is super important. I'm here to say that data is also super important to the small business, and I think it's up to us as an industry to figure out how we help them solve the problem. Let's don't just give them leads, let's give them customers and customer relationships so they can grow. And as they grow, then we obviously grow as an industry as well. So thank you for your time.